The Toronto Blue Jays have signed former All-Star Eduardo Escobar to a minor league deal with an invite to spring training. It's not the flashiest move, but he's someone that's going to offer some internal competition, and don't be surprised if a trade is on the horizon with his inclusion into the lineup. So we'll break that down and much more in this episode of Jays Digest. What's up, Jays fans? I'm your host, Peter Vryonis, alongside host Nick Gosse. Now, it's not the flashiest move to get Eduardo Escobar, especially after the season that he had in 2022, but he's a solid vet, and he's a switch hitter, and he can play multiple positions in the infield. So another wrinkle that's added to this Blue Jays roster, a bit more internal competition to offer to Santiago Espinal, Kevin Biggio, Davis Schneider, all those guys that are vying for those infield spots that are up for grabs over there. So the good thing about this deal is that it's a minor league deal. He doesn't occupy a 40-man roster spot. And if he's just not cutting it in spring training, if you don't think you have any sort of upside with him going into the season, you can just cut ties and you don't have to impact your immediate roster. So it's a good move in that sense. And he is a vet. He has been there, done that, former All-Star. And just as recently as 2022, he was very good and very productive at the plate. So Nick, I'm liking this deal right now, and I think this is something that could be a good thing for the Jays in spring training.
Yeah, a lot of Jays fans were, including us, a little bit up in arms, not knowing whether it was a minor league or major league deal. A quick reminder, we're on the road to 12,000 subscribers, so make sure to hit that subscribe button. 70% of you who are watching aren't subscribed. Peter, let's just get right into it. A first broke by Peter on Main, 7:30 yesterday, basically at around 7:30 or 6 Eastern. And we were all like, okay, we don't know if this guy was legit for sure. He was, as Shadavidi reported today, and Robert Murray and John Heyman got it as well. The Blue Jays and infielder Eduardo Escobar are in agreement on a minor league deal, pending a physical per source. And the minor league deal thing is very important because he doesn't occupy a roster spot. Now, Escobar is an interesting guy. He was okay the past three, or that last season he was bad, but he still mashes lefties. At least he did in 2022, 2021, and 2020. And we'll get into all that in a minute. But Peter, you mentioned it. He's a veteran guy. You can look at his stats here. Last season was really, really bad for him, which is maybe why we got him on a minor league deal, which is kind of why I don't really mind this move. You're buying low. I mean, you're not trading for him, but you're signing him at a point where he had a very poor season last year, but you look back to 2022 even, he was an okay hitter, especially against lefties. In his career, he's shown the ability to mash lefties. He was an all-star as recently as 2021. Yes, he's older and he's a veteran, but, I mean, he's going to compete with a roster spot. We'll get into the trade talks in a second here, but I don't mind it at all, and the minor league deal makes it even better. There's zero risk to this whatsoever.
Yeah, and we got to give him the benefit of the doubt as well. He has been a solid contributor, and the one thing that I'm looking at in that stat sheet that you're showing over there, his positional versatility. I mean, we're seeing 4, 5, sometimes even 6 different positions in a single season that he's occupied. So he can play all over the diamond. He's a super utility guy at this point of his career, and we got to give him the benefit of the doubt in the sense that last season he played on a couple of dumpster fire teams in the Los Angeles Angels and the New York Mets. So obviously the Mets were supposed to be this big story, the greatest show on turf with all the money that they spent in the offseason. And Eduardo Escobar was going to be a big part of that. He was their everyday third baseman for the most part at the beginning of the season, and it didn't work out. We know how bad the Mets were throughout the season, and their lineup was just garbage, and then they traded everyone at the deadline. So that wasn't a good situation for him. And then he was brought into L.A., and we know the story over there. They lost their generational superstar and Shohei Ohtani because they were unable to surround him with talent. And the guys on that team are just unable to perform for whatever reason. They don't have it in them. And he played on a couple of very bad teams, but in 2022 and 2021, he was very solid. And I know he wasn't great in 22, but he still hit 20 home runs, drove in nearly 70 RBIs, and he was solid at the plate. OPS under 800, but a guy that's going to play sparingly and someone that's going to be sort of at the end of at the end of your bench at this point of his career. I think this is a solid pickup, and let's touch on the trade, Nick. I mean, this puts a lot of pressure on Santiago Espinal because Eduardo Escobar can play all those positions that Espinal can, and he's a switch hitter, and he's a better hitter right now than Espinal is. So I think I like this deal right now, and I know he's not occupying a 40-man roster spot at the moment, but if Espinal gets shipped out from, let's say, like a mid-level prospect or a fringe prospect that isn't on the 40 man, that's when you could add Eduardo Escobar to it.
Yeah, and there's a few things I do want to go over quickly. He kind of echoes the same thing you say. It's not flashy like Cody Bellinger. It doesn't occupy a 40-man spot. Spring training's other way. There's no risk. And one thing I do want to note, and I'm going to make the prediction, I would not be surprised if he makes it out of spring training over one of those guys you mentioned. Maybe they ship off Espinal. Just not over Espinal per se, but I think he might make it out of camp just as a third baseman who mashes lefties. Because if you look at his left-handed hitting stats, obviously they're not here, but in 2023, his WRC plus against lefties was 108. Even in his horrible year last year, he was still well above average against lefties. 2022 was 128, and 2021 it was a 131. So Peter, he still mashes lefties. Even in a horrible situation last year, he was a 108 against lefties WRC plus, which is like similar to OPS plus if you're unfamiliar. So he can make camp out of spring training as that kind of third baseman. He can play everywhere, like you said, just to play against lefties, similar to what we did with our prediction regarding Espinal, but a better hitter, not as good of a fielder, but a better hitter who's a veteran. And let's not, he hits for power, which is something Espinal doesn't do. 20 home runs in 2022, 28 in 2021. In 2019, obviously 35 with this big season there. Like, I don't know, I like it. I think he breaks it out of camp. Even though I know it's not a flashy signing, you look at it last year, minus 1.1 WAR and 300 plate appearances, whatever it was. But he still hits lefties well. He's a veteran, and I think it's possible.
Yeah, it doesn't jump out at you. That's for sure, and especially at this stage of his career, he's not the same player, and won't have those same numbers, those same gaudy numbers that we saw in 2019, 2021, 2022. But he's solid, and I think this veteran presence is something that is going to be very valuable to this Blue Jays team. I know Espinal is a good player. I think he's got a future in the major leagues. I think he can go and play every day, but not on a contending team. I don't think he's an everyday player on a contending team. And right now, if you look at what he can offer as opposed to Eduardo Escobar, I would take Eduardo Escobar just because of that power potential, the positional versatility. I think he has even more versatility because of that outfield capability than Santiago Espinal, and he's a switch hitter as well. The Blue Jays kind of lost a bit of that righty-lefty balance with bringing in Isaiah Kiner-Falefa and bringing in Justin Turner, who's replacing Brandon Belt in an everyday role. So you don't have that righty-lefty, righty-lefty. You're not really breaking up that lineup. So if you have Eduardo Escobar in there on a day where, let's say, lefty is pitching or righty is pitching, like he can be that kind of flip flop in there, and it's a good thing to have.
Yeah, and obviously, again, this is not. I'm probably higher on Escobar than most, and it's not really an issue with Espinal as much. I just think the ceiling for Eduardo Escobar, even though he is 34, we've seen that he can hit for power. Like, if he gets hot, especially against lefties, he can provide something that Espinal doesn't provide, which is a significant power bat. Strictly against lefties, he's not going to play every day. He might not even make camp, and Espinal might go on to have a great season. Espinal's glove is much better than Eduardo, or Espinal. Yeah, Espinal's glove is much better than Eduardo Escobar, but I don't know if they really care as much about that, given how much the other players on our team can play defense, specifically IKF. Like, this almost makes more sense that they brought in IKF now. So I don't know. I'm kind of all for it. We've seen that he rolled into the Blue Jays complex here in Dunedin, and who knows if he'll make it out of camp, and who knows if they might not even trade Espinal. He might not make it out of camp, and this might be an interesting thing, but I'm happy with it. He mashes lefties, even still, again, last season, given all the circumstances, he still hit him well. So I'm here for it. Wouldn't be an everyday role, but strictly against lefties, you could slot him in the spot that Espinal was going to play in our projected lineups. And I don't think many Jays fans can be upset given the power potential he has, even though he had a horrible season last year.
Yeah, I just think it's good to have this internal competition, and it's not a bad thing. And especially that he's not occupying a roster spot, and you don't have to shuffle things around to accommodate him with an invite to spring training. I think this is good for the Blue Jays. It maybe lights a fire under some guys that needed it a bit more. And I can't wait. I can't wait to see what he can do. Can he return to that form in limited action? Because he's not going to be an everyday player. That's established. He's not going to be a guy that plays 150 games for you. He's going to be a part-timer, but can he be productive in the time that he is on the field? Those are the big question marks, and hopefully he has the answers. So I'm looking forward to it, and I'm excited to see these guys in action because it looks like they're all battling internally. They're all battling for those roster spots, and they're all battling to make a name for themselves and really earn their playing time. So I'm all for it.
Yeah, let us know in the comments. I'm very curious to see. I know a lot of fans out there might not be super happy, but there's no harm at the end of the day. So we'll see where this takes the Jays as spring training continues to get underway. But that'll wrap it up. If you want to check out our video from yesterday, click on your screen now. Thank you guys for watching, and hopefully Escobar can be some form of his 2019-2020 self.